Retro Rob plays everything.
Hey, Rob here, and this is my Pico-8 mock-up console. It is made out of Raspberry Pi version B. It's really an old version of Raspberry Pi, but it works fine for this particular function. You would never actually know it by booting it because I've taken off anything that indicates it might have once been Raspberry Pi. Everything says Pico-8 on it when it's booting. I'll be showing the boot screen in the background. It takes a while to boot because I basically used a Raspberry Pi that I was already using, a version of Raspbian that I was already using, and might want to use again, so I didn't want to wipe it completely out, but you can't tell that it's there anymore. Anyway, it just basically boots up to Splore at this point. The controllers are kind of generic controllers I got off of Amazon. I'll talk about that in a minute. The case also is a generic, just black box case I got for electronics off of Amazon. It is not for Raspberry Pi. I purposely went with a case that wasn't designed for Raspberry Pi because I didn't want it to look like a Raspberry Pi product. I wanted it to have its own look, and that's kind of how I came up with the idea of this kind of HAL, the HAL light in the front. This is just a machine screw on the front, and then there's an LED behind. Oh yeah, let's switch it on so you can see that. In the back here, I do have a standard switch that I got that is standard for Raspberry Pi stuff. I got that switch just because it's easy to install, and I was on a time constraint. The only switches I had around were like big, huge switches, and I didn't want to have to order one and then hook it up. And we no longer have Radio Shack here because they've all closed down now, so I didn't have that option. Normally I would have just gone to Radio Shack and got something and wired it up. It is a hard switch, so it's, if you hit it, it's going to shut down hard, so you probably shouldn't do that. It should be shut down properly. That said, you know, there's times where you just got to shut it down, and that's quite useful. Plus, it, you know, keeps it off when you want it to be off when it's plugged in. All right, so there is the eyeball. That was kind of a pain in the butt to do. It wasn't terrible. Believe it or not, this is a very early Christmas light. We got one of the first generation Christmas LED strings. They had no blue back then, and so it was just red and green. This is one of the red LEDs from it. This one was one of the spares, and it is flat on the top, so it looks pretty darn good there. And I think it's I can't remember. I cannot remember how much resistance I had to put in there because I had to look it up, but it's basically running off the 5-volt line, so it's not a very smart light. It just comes on when the power's on, and there's a resistor in there making sure it doesn't blow itself up. As far as the controls, I said I was going to come back to that, and I do want to talk to that. This controller is kind of a generic one I got off of Amazon, as is the keyboard. I'm probably going to upgrade these. I'm thinking I'm probably going to shell a regular Nest controller because, you know, you see them all the time. And I got this little Nest USB adapter I'm going to do that with. The controls aren't that bad. I didn't have any complaints about them, and I did show this thing at MGC. But it just, there's something not quite right. They're not bad, but they just feel a little bit light, and I want to have more of an OEM feel to it. And then keyboard's the same thing. I think it's a little bit too light. I've been thinking about taking an Apple keyboard, possibly because it has the same small look, and then basically taking it apart and spray painting it black, and then putting, you know, a couple thousand coats of protectant on it, and then using that as the one. Obviously this little Windows key here is going to have to go. I'm going to erase that out, but I didn't have time in the prototyping process to do it. Anyway, that is pretty much it. In the background you can actually see a little bit of gameplay, probably not a whole lot, but kind of neat, I think. What do you think? Have you built one of these? Let me know about it. And if you enjoyed this video, please do me a favor, give me a thumbs up, and subscribe for more. I'll see you in a couple days.
Retro Rob's gaming videos.